lit by torchlight and wary glances. As we walked together toward her quarters, her hand brushed mine, hesitant, questioning. I laced our fingers. She inhaled sharply, wings lifting in stunned delight. "This is intimate." "Yeah," I said. "That's the point." She looked at me like she was seeing stars she'd never noticed before. "Human," she whispered, voice shaking. "I warned them you were dangerous." "Oh? Yes." She squeezed my hand. "I told them you were the kind of danger that changes people." A slow grin tugged at my lips. "And you?" She leaned close, forehead nearly touching mine. Her breath brushed my cheek, warm, steady, fierce. "I think," she murmured, "I want to be changed." We stood at the threshold of her chambers, the ship humming around us, two wildly different beings held together by something irrational, reckless, and beautifully human. Fire and chaos. Scales and softness. Fear and choice. Whatever came next, tests, clan judgment, cultural catastrophes, we'd face it together. Syraxis drew me inside, wings folding protectively around us as the door slid shut. And for the first time since the galaxy had warned me about the dangerous dragon woman, I realized they were absolutely right. She was dangerous. But so was I. The Ashen dragon arrived on the burned horizon like a living omen, wings unfolding in a span wide enough to steal the sky. The locals of Outpost Greyline ran for shelter, screaming about ancient prophecies, unpaid debts, and one particularly bitter farmer yelling that this better not be about the 40 credits he owed the embassy. But the dragon paid them no attention. Her molten eyes swept the broken ruins of the frontier settlement as if searching for a worthy opponent, someone bold, armed, and foolish enough to fight a creature older than half the charted galaxy. Instead, she found a human. He wasn't even doing anything heroic at the time. Just fixing a busted water pump in the courtyard, kneeling beside a pile of half-rusted parts while humming off-key. His sleeves were rolled up, grease smeared across his jaw, hair a mess of sun-bleached curls that clearly hadn't met a comb in at least 3 interstellar rotations. He hadn't looked up when the first shockwave hit. Or the second. It took the dragon landing directly behind him for him to finally pause mid-adjustment and sigh. "That better not be ash clogging the intake again," he muttered, wiping his hands and turning around. And there she was, massive, carved from black obsidian and tempered flame, smoke drifting from her scales and slow curls. Her crest flared like a storm in motion, shadows twisting around her, as though obeying her pulse. The Ashen dragon, scourge of 7 nebulae, highest talon of the Carduan clans, uttering her full list of titles usually required a scroll and a small break for hydration. She blinked. He blinked back. Then he said, "Hey! Mind folding those wings? I just cleared debris last week." Her jaws parted slightly. Not in a snarl, though that would have been more appropriate, but in visible confusion. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Not even her own clanmates, who tended to address her with a respect level that bordered on religious fear. But this human? He didn't even stand up. Just brushed a smudge off his cheek and waited. The dragon lowered her massive head, bringing her molten eyes dangerously close. "Human," she rumbled, her voice vibrating the cracked stone beneath them. "I have come seeking the warrior of this settlement." "Well," he said thoughtfully, "that's not me. The last guy who qualified moved to a quiet moon to be a poet. Or a bartender. Hard to say, his handwriting is terrible." Her wings rustled. She was used to warriors, proud, screaming, eager for death warriors. This soft-spoken mechanic with a stubborn water pump did not fit the category. Still, she sniffed him once, then twice, then leaned closer with the slow, predatory grace of someone who had decided to inspect their meal before taking a bite. "You smell strange," she declared. "Thank you," he said with absolute sincerity. "I try my best." She narrowed her gaze. "It was not meant as praise." "Ah. My bad." Then, much to his bewilderment, she circled him, studying him with the full focus of a creature who had never once in centuries been surprised by anything. Your kind is known for chaos, she continued, and for kissing things you probably should not. He squinted. That happened one time. And the cactus started it. Silence. Uncomfortable. Heavy. Full of sharp draconic judgment. I see, she said flatly. He desperately changed the subject. So, you're here for a fight? Because if you want the six-legged militia, well, they're on strike. Again. No. The word hissed like steam. I came to declare dominion. To conquer this place and make it a staging ground for war against the Frontier Alliance. And to challenge your strongest to single combat so their defeat will echo across the stars. That does sound serious. He stood up at last, stretching out his back until his joints cracked. But you might want to reconsider. We haven't had a proper strongest person since the poet-bartender incident. The rest of us are more, emotionally resilient than physically intimidating. Her crest flickered. Then who maintains your defenses? He gestured at the pump. You're looking at him. She stared long and hard, as if waiting to confirm whether he was joking. Humans often joked, she'd been warned. It was a sign of instability, her diplomats had claimed. Or charm, depending on which file you read. But the human didn't seem unstable. If anything, he seemed infuriatingly calm. He held himself with the kind of grounded, weather-worn patience she associated with meteor-forged stone, unyielding, steady, strangely warm despite its scars. You do not fear me, she said, studying the way his heartbeat didn't spike, not even a little. Should I? He asked, genuinely curious. I am the Ashen Dragon. He shrugged. I've had worse days. She opened her mouth to argue, to roar, to threaten, to declare herself with all the weight of her ancient titles, but something caught her off guard. It wasn't his words. It wasn't even his baffling politeness in the face of a living apocalypse. It was the way he looked at her. Not with terror. Not with worship. Just presence. A grounded recognition that she existed, here and now, without judgment or trembling awe. No one had ever done that. Not even her own kin. And for a dragon forged from fire and old war, the sensation was disarming. Human, she finally said. What is your name? Jace. Jace, she repeated, tasting it on her tongue as if learning a new, delicate weapon. I am here for conquest. I will not be swayed. That's fine, he replied. But if you're going to conquer the place, you'll need to know where we keep the emergency rations. And the paperwork. There's a tragic amount of paperwork. Her tail froze mid-swing. Paperwork? Oh yeah? Galactic Ordinance 77F. Can't start a war near a settlement without filing a Form 14A. And trust me, you do not want to skip the sanitation checklist. They fined us 300 credits last time. 308119. The Ashen Dragon followed Jace through the half-collapsed courtyard like a creature who could not decide whether she was scouting a new lair, or walking straight into a trap so stupid it defied tactical explanation. Her talons clicked sharply on the stone, each impact leaving faint scorch marks. The settlers hid behind broken walls and overturned crates, whispering prayers and apologies to every god they could remember. Some apologized to gods from the wrong religions entirely, just in case. Meanwhile, Jace moved as if escorting a tourist. Mind the step, he said casually. The step was a crater. She stepped over it with a huff. They reached the administrative shack, a grand title for a building held together by stubbornness and duct tape. The dragon eyed it with disgust. This is your fortress of authority? Yep. It leans. It does its best. It is missing a wall. That was the windstorm, he said, and then, as if remembering, well, partly the windstorm. Mostly my cooking accident. The dragon stared. She did that a lot around him. You destroyed a structural wall with cooking? I got enthusiastic. Is this normal for humans? Pretty much. She filed that away under the growing list of human hazards. Fire, case, emotional attachment, and apparently culinary violence. Jace gestured for her to duck inside. Welcome to the paperwork room. The Ashen dragon braced herself. She had prepared for battlefields, duels, ambushes, but nothing prepared her for the horror that awaited. Piles of forms stacked to the ceiling. Folders overflowing with regulations. Notices pinned to corkboards with threats like failure to file within 72 hours will result in sanctions. Her tail stiffened. Her wings twitched. She inhaled sharply. This is the enemy. Yep, Jace said sympathetically. Only one I haven't beaten yet. She lowered her head and whispered with the reverence one might use in a tomb. You fight this alone? Someone has to. A strange sound escaped her lungs, a soft, low rumble, not quite a growl. Something like respect, but shaped by disbelief. Your people are unhinged, she murmured. Thank you. It was not praise. She approached the main desk, squinting at a form titled Declaration of Temporary Hostile Occupation, Non-Lethal or Semi-Lethal. Jace pulled out a chair for her. It cracked under her gaze and detonated into splinters when she tried to sit, leaving him brushing away debris as if this happened regularly. Right, he said. Standing is fine. Human, she said slowly. How do your species tolerate this ritual of endless documentation? It is. Spirit crushing? Yes. We don't tolerate it, he said brightly. We complain. Loudly. And then we do it anyway because someone will yell at us if we don't. She blinked. Your society functions on shame? Oh, absolutely. It was then, while she watched him rummage through forms with practiced exhaustion, that she felt something she'd never felt in a conquered settlement before: curiosity. Not strategic curiosity. Not the kind born from assessing weaknesses. But something far more inconvenient. She wanted to understand him. Jace placed 3 forms on the desk. Okay. First one is the 14A. That's the one you technically need for announcing a conquest. It's mostly name, intent, intended duration, whether you plan to vaporize anything. I do not vaporize settlements, she said automatically. They look better melted. He paused. Do you want me to mark that under scenic alteration or creative expression? She looked him dead in the eye. Both. He wrote it down without judgment. And for reasons she couldn't articulate, that simple acceptance made her throat warm. The next form was worse. A multi-page checklist about hazard mitigation, emergency evacuation plans, and, she gagged slightly, environmental impact projections. I am a dragon, she declared in outrage. My impact is destruction. Yeah, that's why you need the projection. Her tail slammed the floor. Filing intent to destroy is bureaucratic blasphemy. Tell that to the regional governor. She almost did. She was considering flying straight to the governor's palace and reducing it to glowing rubble. But something stopped her. A very irritating human, leaning on the counter, watching her with that maddeningly calm expression that said he expected her to try. And somehow, that expectation made her refuse. She would not give him the satisfaction. Or the paperwork. Her wings folded tight. Jace, she said, the name rumbling through her chest like a secret she had not meant to share aloud. Your people are a menace to universal efficiency. We do try. She exhaled heat in a slow plume. You are infuriating. He shrugged with an easy half-smile. You get used to it. You assume I intend to. Their eyes met again, heat against steadiness, fire against stubborn earth. And for a moment, the air between them thickened, as if the universe paused to take notes. She was the one who broke it first, turning sharply to the forms. Very well, she growled. Explain this one. That's the 77F supplement, he said. It's basically a promise that you'll try not to cause large-scale death while conducting your conquest. What counts as large-scale? Define large. She tilted her head. More than a village. He wrote that down. Good to know. And if I'd burn only a few outbuildings? Borderline acceptable. She made a pleased rumble. Excellent. Citizens hiding outside overheard that. 2 fainted. One asked his neighbor whether dragons considered barns outbuildings, which led to a spirited debate about zoning laws even while in mortal danger. Jace continued explaining more forms, each more absurd than the last. Form 12Q, Notice of Temporary Loss of Sky Space. Form 99B, Acknowledgement of Fear-Inducing Presence. Form 4C, Voluntary Pledge Not to Eat Anyone Important. She refused to sign that last. The night settled over the settlement like a heavy cloak, muting the distant hum of generators and the restless shifting of frightened citizens. Jace walked across the cracked courtyard with a lantern in hand, its dim glow carving a narrow path through shadows. Behind him, the Ashen dragon followed with a controlled tension that did not suit her. She moved like someone expecting a blade to emerge from the dark, and fully prepared to burn the entire region if it did. Her wings stayed tight. Her tail never touched the ground. And every few steps, she glanced toward the rooftops as if something unseen prowled there. Jace slowed. "You're doing that thing again." "What thing?" Her voice was a low thunder. "Paranoid warlord scanning." "I am a paranoid warlord." "Fair." He kept walking, pretending he didn't hear the low, restless growl vibrating in her chest. Pretending he didn't notice how she was staying closer than usual, close enough that the heat from her scales brushed the back of his neck like breath. Close enough that her armor scraped lightly against his shoulder whenever she drifted too near. He didn't comment. She definitely noticed. They reached the center of the settlement, an old beacon tower half swallowed by vines, with a rusted ladder leading to a platform overlooking the valley. Jace started climbing. The dragon narrowed her eyes. "That structure will collapse if I place even one talon on it." "Then don't climb. Fly up." She stared at him, weighing dignity against practicality. Dignity nearly won. Practicality grudgingly shoved it aside. She spread her wings and lifted herself onto the platform in a single sweep, landing with such force the entire tower shuddered. Jace clung to the ladder until the world stopped vibrating. "Could have warned me," he muttered. "I could have," she agreed, tail flicking with smug precision. They stood together at the top, overlooking the moonlit valley. Broken fields stretched into darkness. The sky swirled with the faint glow of distant nebulae. It should have been peaceful. But Vale Cash's eyes were fixed on the horizon with a snarl forming at the edges of her voice. "They are coming," she said. Jace exhaled softly. "Your people?" "Not mine. Pretenders. Vultures crowding the edge of power. They smell weakness in my silence. You've been here less than a day." "For a dragon," she said. "Silence of one day is a confession." He understood. More than she expected. "So what now?" Her claws tightened on the railing, metal warping under her grip. "They will come thinking they can defeat me. They will challenge me before your people. They will demand blood, victory, or death. And you? I will give them all three if necessary." The cold certainty in her tone made the lantern light flicker. Jace swallowed. "That's a hell of a tradition. It is how we maintain order. It's also how you get extinction." Her wings flinched barely, but enough for him to catch. She leaned forward, her massive frame silhouetting the sky. "You call it extinction. We call it honor. You sure those aren't the same thing?" A dangerous sound rolled from her chest, but it wasn't anger. It was something more complicated. Something that recognized the truth even when she didn't want to. Below them, the settlement was quiet. Families whispered, children hid, adults clutched makeshift weapons. Jace watched it all with that steady, stubborn calm she didn't understand. "You protect them," she said. "Even when they fear you. Even when they blame you. They're my people. That's what you do for your people. And if they do not deserve it? Then you protect them anyway." She considered that, wings curling inward. It was such a human concept, loyalty without logic, affection without condition. It irritated her, and fascinated her even more. "Your heart," she murmured, "is reckless. Yours isn't?" "My heart is a weapon," she said. "Yours is a fire." "Same thing." She looked. away quickly, pretending the words didn't hit deeper than they should. The silence sharpened when a soft vibration trembled through the air, so faint Jace wouldn't have noticed if she hadn't straightened suddenly. "They are close," she said. "How close?" Her pupils narrowed into slits. 200 meters. The wind carries their scent. She paused. "And their idiocy." "What kind of idiocy?" "The ritual kind." Jace groaned. "Wonderful." Without warning, a flare of violet light ignited from the tree line below. A dozen Draconel challengers emerged, scaled, winged, armored in bone and ash. They marched toward the settlement like a procession of doom. Jace stepped to the edge. "We should go down there." Veilcash didn't move. Her breath grew hotter. "Jace." "Yeah?" "When they challenge me, you must not intervene." "Define intervene." "Do nothing." "Define nothing." She turned her head slowly, fixing him with a stare that could melt orbiting satellites. "If you jump in, they will kill you." He met her blazing eyes with a simple, infuriating calm. "If you fall, they'll kill you." "I do not fall." "Everyone falls eventually." Her wings snapped open. Not in anger, but in fear. Real fear. He saw it for a heartbeat before she masked it behind steel. "You do not understand," she said, voice low. "If I lose, they will not merely kill me. They will take everything. My lineage, my clan, my future. And they will burn this place to smoke. So we don't let you lose." She growled. "You cannot fight them. I improvised last time. You ruined 3 sacred rituals." He winced. "Okay, but one of those was an accident. You threw a soup pot at a war priest. He was charging at me. It was still a sacred war priest. I said I was sorry." She pressed a clawed hand to her forehead, muttering curses in a language that sounded like volcanic eruptions. When she looked back at him, her voice held something new. "Raw. Vulnerable. If they think you are important to me," she said, "they will use you." Jace blinked. "Am I?" Her jaw clenched hard enough that small embers fell from her teeth. "That," she growled, "is irrelevant." "No, it really isn't." Before she could snarl a response, a blast of violet light hit the tower, shaking the entire platform. Jace staggered. She caught him by the back of his shirt and hauled him upright with a growl. "They are already here," she said. "We must go." He grabbed her arm. "Veilcash." She froze. "You're not alone." His voice was soft. Too soft. Too direct. It sank past her armor in ways she hated, ways she couldn't defend against. Her throat tightened. Heat pulsed through her scales. And for the first time since she arrived, she whispered, "Human, you are dangerous to me." He smiled. Not cocky. Not mocking. Just real. "I know." The challengers roared from below. The settlement trembled. And together, with a tension neither of them dared name, they descended the tower side by side, into fire, danger, and the storm waiting for them. Dawn rose over the settlement in a pale sweep of gold, brushing the scorched rooftops and cracked soil with a gentle warmth that felt out of place. After the night they'd had, Jace half expected the sun to take one look at the chaos and call in sick. But it climbed anyway, stubborn in the same irritating way humans were, and the Ashen dragon watched it from the ridge above the administrative shack, her wings unfurled just enough to catch the light. She didn't move when Jace approached, she only flicked her gaze toward him, as if confirming he still existed. After everything, the bureaucratic nightmare, the brawl with her own kin, the accidental declaration of partial ownership she made over him in front of half the settlement, he'd expected her to be distant, colder, armored again. But she wasn't. She looked thoughtful. Dangerously thoughtful. "You're late," she murmured. "You can't be late to something you weren't invited to." "Is that a human rule?" "It's a Jace rule." She considered that, letting the light roll over her scales until they gleamed like molten silver. "Your rules are very weak. That's what makes them flexible." Her eyes narrowed, but not in anger, more like fascination trying to disguise itself behind irritation. He stood beside her on the ridge, watching her profile, the way her jawline was carved like a weapon that learned how to hesitate. Below them, the remains of the rival Drakenel faction were being escorted off by her loyalists, those who had chosen her leadership after witnessing last night's chaos. Funny how saving your warlord with sheer human stupidity counted as a political argument in Drakenel culture. Jace was pretty sure he'd broken at least 6 sacred customs and 1 retinal sensor, but hey, it worked. "You have made a mess," she said quietly. "Me? You. Always you." "Usually," he admitted. Her wings curled inward slightly, an unconscious gesture that he'd learned meant she was unsettled. She faced him fully. "When you stood between me and my challenger last night, why did you do that?" "Because he was going to stab you." "I can survive a stab." "Yeah," he said, "but you shouldn't have to." She froze. Really froze. As though the words had hit some part of her armor she didn't know existed. The breeze tugged at her mane of metallic hair, and for the first time she looked less like a war goddess and more like someone who had never been spoken to with such simple certainty. "You risked your life," she continued quieter now, "for no strategic gain." "Sure there was," he said. "You're important to these people." Her eyes narrowed. "Not the answer I wanted." He hesitated, then sighed. "Okay." He rubbed the back of his neck. "You're important to me, too." Silence rolled over them, thick, unnerving, heavy with unspoken things. Her tail went perfectly still. Jace wondered if he had just committed a cultural sin punishable by being incinerated on the spot. There were worse ways to go. She didn't burn him. Instead, she took a step closer, wings arched just slightly, breath warming the air between them. "Human affection is reckless," she murmured. "It arrives without permission. It binds without logic. It invades without force. And your people don't?" "No." Her pupils thinned with intensity. "We negotiate affections. We declare them. Our hearts are formal." She paused. "Yours are wild." He swallowed. "Is that a problem?" "It is," she began, then stopped, struggling as though the language itself betrayed her. "It is dangerous." "For who?" "Me," she whispered. He hadn't expected that. Not from the Ashen Dragon. Not from someone who commanded fleets and ended wars by glaring at them. But now, standing in the growing warmth of morning, she looked stripped of every layer of armor she had ever learned to wear. He moved a little closer, not enough to crowd, just enough to say he wasn't stepping back. "Look," he said softly, "I'm not here to tame you or fix you or whatever poetic nonsense your people use. I'm just here. With you." Her breath hitched. "You make it sound simple. It doesn't have to be complicated to be real." Her gaze lowered to the ground between them, as if she feared he might see something she'd never shown another soul. "When the challenge came last night," she said, "I almost let it happen. I almost let them take my throne. Part of me wanted to be done with all of it." "War?" "Yes." "And then I ruined everything with my heroics?" She exhaled something that was dangerously close to a laugh. "You ruined my surrender." "Yes." "That tracks. But you also reminded me," she said, lifting her gaze again, "that I am more than what my people demand. That I can choose something other than conquest. That I can—" She trailed off, as if the next word was too fragile to speak. He stepped in front of her gently. "Choose what?" Her jaw tensed. "Choose someone." The last word was almost inaudible, pulled from her like a secret force from the deepest part of her chest. Jace felt the world tilt. "Veilcash. Do not say my name like that," she snapped softly, wings flaring. "Not unless you mean what it implies." "And what does it imply?" She stared at him with heat so intense he nearly stepped back. "Nearly. Closeness," she whispered. "Claim. Bond. Humans speak names without consequence. Drakenel do not." He swallowed hard. "Okay," he said. Then I'll use it carefully. She nodded once sharply, but the gesture carried more vulnerability than command. Her claws scraped the ground. Her voice dropped. Jace, what do humans do when they choose someone? He shrugged lightly. We talk. We spend time together. We trust each other. We try. Try what? He met her eyes. Everything. She inhaled sharply, wings trembling. The settlement below had fallen into hushed observation, every settler suddenly very invested in pretending not to stare at the warlord and the human who were definitely not having a moment. The world seemed to quiet, leaning in to listen. The Ashen dragon took a step closer until he could feel the heat radiating off her, the scent of smoke and embers, the pulse of something old and fierce shifting beneath her skin. Then try with me, she said softly. Not as my prisoner. Not as my ward. As something else. He smiled. A slow, warm, thoroughly human smile that made her entire posture tense with an emotion she had no training to handle. Yeah, he murmured. I can try that. They stood there, human and dragon, conqueror and bureaucratic victim, morning sun curling around them like a blessing handed down by gods who had finally decided to enjoy the show. A new path waited at their feet, not carved by war, not written by ancient tradition, but shaped by something far messier and infinitely more powerful. Choice. Connection. The terrifying, exhilarating possibility of more. Veilcash extended one wing slightly toward him, a Draconel gesture both intimate and irreversible. Walk with me, she said. He stepped beneath her wing without hesitation. And for the first time in her long, fire-forged life, the Ashen dragon did not lead her people into conquering a world. She let a single human lead her toward a future she had never dared imagine.